Hey VC, it's Brad Vinyl Guy here again, back with a contest entry. So this one's for Ross Goodall and his 500 subs contest. Congratulations to you, Ross. I really like your channel. I wanted to make this video to show my support for you because the way you talk about music and the sort of music you show is really right up my street. I find myself nodding my head in agreement when you're talking about records. You're always on point with things, and a lot of stuff you show is the sort of stuff that I used to buy when I was, I don't know, in my younger days. So you kind of remind me of a younger me, but you're better looking and more erudite than I ever was. So yeah, good on you, Ross, and here's to the next 500. Now what you wanted to do on this video was put together an A to Z of music, and in this particular case I've gone for an A to Z of bands, all albums apart from one 12-inch single because I was struggling a bit with one letter, which I'll come on to later. So I've tried to show things that I've not shown on my videos before. A lot of the videos I've made up till now, when we've been relatively new to the VC, have been new finds and buys, apart from a couple of exceptions. So there's a lot of stuff sat in my collection that you won't have seen. So all the things that I'm showing today, I think pretty much are bands that I've never shown before. So it's good for me to do and good to support Ross in this way as well. So I'm going to start off with Angelic Upstarts, a bit of punk stroke pre-oi here, Teenage Warning from 1979. And this is a band that I got heavily into courtesy of one of my friends that I was with at high school who's a writer now. And he was a massive fan of the Angelic Upstarts, and I saw them live last year and they're still great now. They're from Newcastle in the UK, and the singles that came off here were Teenage Warning, Little Towers and I'm an Upstart. But great seminal punk, post-punk band produced by Jimmy Percy, who was the lead singer in Sham 69. So that's Angelic Upstarts, Teenage Warning. Next up, a band from California, Los Angeles to be precise. This is Best Coast, and this album's from 2010. This is their debut album, and this one's called Crazy For You. What can I say about them? Surf pop of the highest order. This, like I said, this is their debut, but so you could go for The End or Honey or Happy, Each and Every Day, all great surf pop songs. Beth Cosentino is the lead singer of what is essentially a duo, embraces all things California. You can sort of see a map of California in letters of Best Coast. And she's just a wonderful singer, beautiful sweet voice. Probably highlighted more on the second album on this one. There's a lot of sort of reverb on here, and she's quite distant with the vocals, but still a beautiful album, still full of great pop songs about lost love and missing a boyfriend, all that kind of thing, but beautiful album all the same. Best Coast. So, A Date with Elvis, The Cramps. Great psychobilly. Love The Cramps. Amazing body of work. What's Inside the Girls on here, Can You Pussy Do the Dog. Great sleeves, great artwork always for their albums. Lex, Poison, Ivy. Amazing stuff. Okay, next up, seminal punk band, The Damned, Machine Gun Etiquette, their debut album on Chiswick Records from 1977, possibly the first punk band arguably in the UK. Love songs on here, Smash It Up, Just Can't Be Happy Today. It's a classic, any punk aficionado will have it. Here's The Inner, classic lineup there. Dave Aney and Captain Sensible, et al. On the famous Chiswick label. Original UK pressing here of this one. Essential punk album. Talking about essential albums within the genres, pub rock, R&B, Eddie and the Hot Rods, Teenage Depression, late 70s classic on Island Records, Get Across to You, All I Need Is Money, Shake, big players in the pub rock scene along with Dr. Feelgood, back end of the 70s, bit punky, like I said, a bit R&B as well. A must-have record, as are many of their albums of this era, Eddie and the Hot Rods, Teenage Depression. One of my favourite all-time bands are The Fall. They divide people, don't they? Marquis Smith, Craig Scanlon et al. This is an early 90s album by them, and this has got Billy's Dead on it, which was one of their big songs of the time. Black Monk Theme, Sing Harpy, I'm Frank, Telephone Thing, Hillary, Chicago Now. Fantastic album by a fantastic group from Manchester, The Fall, Extricate. Okay, Grandaddy, Someday, 2003 on V2 Records, double album by them. Not one you often see on vinyl. Another group from California. Now It's On is probably the most famous song on here, and El Camino's in the West were released as singles. But brilliant lo-fi. I'll probably go for Software Slump as my favourite album by them. But this one's quite a rare one, so I thought I'd dig it out. Someday by Grandaddy. Classic 80s indie on Pro Plus Records from Liverpool, Half Man Half Biscuit back in the DHSS. Big favourite of John Peel at the time. Very comedic lyrics with some great keyboard hooks. Venus in Flares, the Len Ganley Stance, I Hate Nerys Hughes from the Heart. Very British references those. 99% of gargoyles look like Bob Todd. Really, really funny, really amusing, and much loved by John Peel. A bit of a change of tack here. I've gone hip hop for Ice Cube and the Predator, part of his classic late 80s, early 90s period for me. When he was at his best. He's probably his best known songs on here. It Was a Good Day, but you can pick a lot of songs from here, and great funkadelic samples on here. Parliament, all that kind of era. Check Yourself is a great song. Who Got the Camera? Say Hi to the Bad Guy. Ice Cube at his best. Very controversial liner notes on here. Not enough hip hop in the VC, but this is when my favourite period of hip hop. That's Ice Cube with the Predator. Okay, so from hip hop to Americana. The Jayhawks, Hollywood Town Hall from 1992. Classic album of its time, of Americana. Great harmonies, great instrumentation. Saw these guys live last year as well. God, I went to a lot of gigs last year. And they were just unbelievable, unbelievable. Change of lineup now to this album, but yeah, must-have album by the Jayhawks, Hollywood Town Hall. Next I'll show you the back of this sleeve first. So what do we have here? We have a large hen, or, shockingly, King Kurt. Does anybody take them seriously? No. Should they? Yes, because they were fantastic. This is a great album, a great psychobilly album from the mid-80s. Produced by the same guys that produced Sweet, of all groups. But, you know, they were known for wearing silly skirts, behaving like idiots on stage, having food fights. But behind that was some great albums, and this is my favourite of theirs. Great rock and roll and psychobilly, an essential album if you like psychobilly. That's King Kurt, Big Cock. Next up, an album that was shown not too long ago in the vinyl community. This is Liars on Fire. High Octane showed this one. This is a fantastic garage album from the early 80s, 1984 for this one. And these guys went on to form Bounce Whitfield's backing band, The Savages, Peter Greenberg and his band. An essential garage album from that period. That's Liars on Fire. No mention of the title or the album or the group or anything apart from on the label. That's pretty cool. A group I've talked about quite a bit in the UK, but not in many videos that I've seen in the VC in the past. Forgive me if you have shown them and you're outside the UK. Is the Manic Street Preachers, much loved by Grebo69 Graham and Andy Cloudy Milder. This is their album called Gold Against the Soul, and this is an original UK pressing of this one. And this has got the singles From Despair to Where, La Tristessa d'Uera, Scream to a Sigh. I Rose in the Hospital on it. La Tristessa d'Uera is a very personal significance to me because that's the song that brought me and my girlfriend together. This is a really good album, not deemed to be one of their best, but again, not one that you see very often, so I thought I'd dig this one out to show. Manic Street Preachers, Gold Against the Soul. And that's indie rock at its best, Welsh three-piece now. New York Dolls, their debut album from 1973. Can't say anything more that hasn't already been said about this seminal punk group. Stroke glam, Personality Crisis on here and Jet Boy, but great album, New York Dolls, self-titled debut. Next up, an album that's not so cool maybe to many people, but at the time, in 1980, this group was pretty cool. Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark Organisation. This was their second album from 1980, and my favourite album of theirs, and probably one of my favourite albums of all time. It's got Enola Gay on it, which was probably their most famous single. You know, they're a kind of electro-pop group, but at the time, and for their first album, in interviews, they were dropping Kraftwerk's name left, right and centre. They were considered to be one of the early synth groups in the UK. But you can pick any song from here, and to me they're all great. The Misunderstanding, the first track on side 2, The More I See You, a little bit more poppy, but still a great song. Promise, Stand Low, you know, lots of minor key great songs. Second Thought, Motion and Heart. If you're into OMD and you don't have this album, which I'm sure you will do, get hold of it because it is an absolute classic. Speaking of which, another favourite albums of mine of all time, that should have made my recent Gimme 10 that I did, but I just couldn't squeeze it in, was Prefab Sprout, Jordan the Comeback, a band from County Durham in the north of England. This is just an amazing album from start to finish. Paddy McAloon, the lead singer, is an amazing songwriter, one of the great British songwriters for me. The first side is staggering. Looking for Atlantis, Wild Horses, Machine Gun Beat, Let the Stars Go, Carnival 2000, and then there's Jesse James' Symphony, The Ice Maiden, The Wedding March, Michael, Mercy. There's about 18, 19 songs on here, and they are all unbelievable. A lot of people talk about Steve McQueen as being their best album, but for me, Jordan the Comeback is incredible. And if you do have Steve McQueen and you don't have this album, please buy it as soon as you can. You won't be disappointed. Now I've got to Q, and obviously Q is always going to be a difficult one. And there's a couple of really obvious ones that I could go for. But this is the only letter of the alphabet where I've not chosen an album. I've just gone for a 12-inch single. And this is a group called The Questions from Edinburgh in Scotland, and The Price You Pay. And this is a 45, as it says here, on the famous Respond Records, Paul Weller's label. And they wrote The House of Jack Built for Tracy, the guys from this group, which you may know, especially if you're from the UK. It was a big hit here. And that's the famous Respond label of Paul Weller. I know there's a lot of Paul Weller and Jam fans on here, so it was nice to get in a relatively obscure band that only made one album, The Questions, and that single's called The Price You Pay. Always a favourite of mine when I was growing up, from the early 80s. 1983, I think that one. Next, I've gone with a very famous girl band from the United States, The Runaways, and this is an original US press of their debut single, self-titled, from 1976, and here's The Gatefold. And this, to me, I thought it's years ahead of its time. I won't pretend that I was into it in 1976 when it came out, because I wasn't. It's obviously one that I've discovered later. Again, this is courtesy of my girlfriend, she was a big fan. But Cherry Bomb, the first track on side 1, is just, I just think it's years ahead of its time when I heard it for the first time. And I mean, these girls were 16 and 17 when they made this album. You know, Lita Ford, Joan Jett, and the others. It's just, it's a great album, an essential for any music fan, I would say. The Runaways' debut album from 1976. Girl bands just ain't like that anymore, are they? Another of my favourite albums of all time is Special's self-titled first album, Two-Tone Records. What can you say about this? Produced by Elvis Costello. Mrs. Stu Rudy's on here. All these are great songs. You can pick any of them on the entire album, and it's just brilliant from start to finish. Obviously heavily influenced by ska, Prince Buster in particular. He's all over this album, his influence, but Too Much Too Young, Monkey Man, Blank Expression, Stupid Marriage, Nightclub, Doesn't Make It Alright, Concrete Jungle, any of the songs, it's just amazing from start to finish. That's the Specials debut album. 1980, just moving on a year from the Specials. Teardrop Explodes, Kilimanjaro. Again, an incredible post-punk, new wave album. Julian Cope at the helm, obviously. This is the sleeve I prefer, this is the pressing I prefer. Has Kilimanjaro here in the background. Probably just about to make that out on the camera. And the zebras on the front. And I have a close connection with a guy who played on here, Michael Finkler, so it's quite a relevant album for me as well. But Sleeping Gas was the first single that came off here. There was a minor hit in the UK, but a classic late 70s title for a song of that time, I would say. Reward, Treason, the best known songs are on here. But Bouncing Babies also included, Thief of Baghdad, Brave Boys Keep Their Promises. It's just a When I Dream seminal late 70s, early 80s must-have album by the Teardrop Explodes. My musical hero, John Foxx, had to include Ultravox, and my favourite album by them, Systems of Romance. This was the last album they made, 1978 I think for this one. Again, incredible. Slow Motion was re-released later on top of Midshore, making Ultravox a little bit more mainstream. Someone Else's Clothes, A Quiet Men, Dislocation, Maximum Acceleration, When You Walk Through Me, Just for a Moment. Side 2 on here, one of the best sides of music I've ever heard. They were great, they were getting better as time went on. John Foxx left him famously in the middle of an American tour before he went solo. Fantastic album, Systems of Romance by Ultravox. For V, back to the United States for the Velvet Underground, self-titled album. Had to go this one. Here's the back. This is a second UK pressing. I can't really say much about the Velvet Underground, apart from them being years ahead of the game. On MGM Records, like I said, second press in the UK. Velvet Underground there with their self-titled album. For W, another band that are very close to my heart, from the same city as me. It's The Wedding Present, and this is their debut album. Here's an original press of George Best. Great jangly guitar, indie rock from the late 80s. I think this is 1987, this album. Leeds mentioned all over the album, despite this guy being on the front, who was famously played for Manchester United. Everyone thinks he looks daft. The opening track, one of the great opening tracks of all time on any album for me. My favourite Dress is the best known song on here, but full of great indie jangly pop songs, rock songs. Million Miles, All This and More, Shatner, Something and Nothing. What you want that matters. Give My Love to Kevin. Anyone can make a mistake. Again, John Peel loved them with reason. Their early stuff was just incredible. Really nice inner with this one. A picture of the band. Dave Gedge here, the lead singer. And Keith Gregory, he was a good friend of my girlfriend when she was a little girl. So nice to have that connection too. That's The Wedding Present with George Best. Over to Hamburg, Germany now. For my ex, which is XML Deutschland, and this album called Fetish. They were very Susie and the Banshees-esque, Cocteau Twins influenced as well, I would say, famously on 4AD Records. XML Deutschland and Fetish. All-female band initially when they formed in 1980. It's a really nice inner on this one with lyric sheet. And on the 4AD label. So, yeah, pretty cool as well. Track listing there on the front. Okay, so with Y, no contest for me, hands down. I've got to go for Neil Young, and the fact that I've not mentioned any of his albums, I'm pretty sure I haven't mentioned any of his albums yet, which is criminal on my part. This is he's second down from 1969 with Crazy Horse. Everybody knows This Is Nowhere, and it's really hard for me to pick a favourite Neil Young album. This is certainly one of them. I mean, starting off with Cinnamon Girl, Down by the River, Cowgirl in the Sand. It's an absolute classic, even by Neil Young standards. And this is Gatefold. Not a very exciting front sleeve, I suppose, but it doesn't matter, does it, when you listen to the contents on the three-coloured Reprise label, which is one of my favourites as well. I'm not a collector of labels, but I know a pretty label when I see one, and I always admire that Reprise one. And finally, we're at the end. And again, not too difficult for me to choose on this one. I've gone with Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, Overnight Sensation. Yeah, I could have picked one of a few Frank Zappa's albums. This is one of my favourites, and Frank Zappa was genius, obviously, all over the place with the music. Hilarious lyrics. Again, a nice gatefold with this one. And I've got a couple of different pressings of this one. I'm not sure which one this is. It's the UK one, that's for sure, or European. But yeah, Frank Zappa to finish with. So, cheers for watching, everyone. Thanks for getting to the end. All the best, Ross. Good luck with your next 500. See you all soon. Take care. Bye.